Chair now recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great to be here. And I'm going to follow in the same vein. I think that the methodology is really important here. The Americans want and expect to have accurate data to make sure that it's accurate. And when the concern I think that we've seen up here today is that that the data was publicly heralded by the Biden administration as a drop in violent crime nationwide. And of course, when you revise it, it turned out to be not so true, but it was only because of sourcing it or finding it yourself. There wasn't a press release about it. And so I just think accuracy is important, and I worry about the methodology. I wanted to drill down into some of the methodology. So when you compile this data on a particular jurisdiction, you look at either publicly sourced information or reporting. Is that right?
Are you referring to the 2021 data?
Or any set of data when you're compiling a yearly assessment of crime, violent crime, you look at either publicly sourced information about violent crime in that jurisdiction or a self-reporting from that jurisdiction, correct?
We do not use publicly sourced, manually sourced data during the typical crime in the nation reporting. We use what is reported to us from the law enforcement agencies.
Okay. And when you when you are compiling the statistics about it, not just the raw data, you look at the population of the jurisdiction too?
We do, correct.
Okay, so if there's one violent crime and there's 1,000 people that live in that jurisdiction, how is that rectified in your report?
I would have to go back and take a look at the report, and I apologize, again, not a statistician, but I can.
Correct.
But I can tell you that the report does show the offense compared to the number of people within that population.
Okay. So hypothetically, I'm going to give you a hypothetical, just because I want to understand how this is compiled. If there's a town of 1,000 people, and they have a giant music festival, and there's crimes that are committed at that music festival, it would be logged in as a crime in that jurisdiction. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Despite the fact that it was maybe, and again, I'm total hypothetical, there's no town to this, but if it's 1,000 people, say they have 20,000 people for a music concert once a year, if there were crimes that were committed in that jurisdiction, that would be reported.
That's correct.
But that necessarily wouldn't be accurate, correct? I mean, that's not the town violent crime overall. It's just this one isolated event. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a great point. And I think we try to take a look for if we notice any anomalies based on previous years' reporting. As an example of that would be 9/11. We would not have reported the almost 3,000 individuals who were, it was basically a homicide in the city of New York.
Right.
We would have separated those from the crime reporting to make sure that we didn't unnecessarily skew numbers based on anomalies such as that. Those are rare, but on occasion I will say yes, we have seen some anomalies in the past based on that.
Well, would you say, so for me, I think the interesting thing is, does this data count in any which way for events such as that, or maybe even transient populations?
To the best that we're able to do so, we do. I mean, the reason that we stop the collection, or we say April 1st is our deadline, is because we want to have that entire time between April 1st and when we publish the report in September, October timeframe, to work with those jurisdictions and those agencies to make sure if there's anomalies that we can have those conversations. But again, those are generally pretty rare.
How do you account for jurisdictions, tourism-related jurisdictions in Florida, the Carolinas, Georgia, who have maybe 20,000, 30,000 full-time residents, but in the summertime you're swelling to 100,000 a week?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that goes back to the work that we do collaborating with those local law enforcement agencies and the state agencies to make sure that we're trying to get it right as we can.
Well, I would hope that in the future that happens, because that does actually happen. That jurisdictions, if you look at tourism-related jurisdictions, a lot of them, the numbers seem very disproportionate to the rest of the country, and you take a city of 20 or 30,000 people, full-time residents, but you swell them to 500,000 on any given week in the summertime or whenever their peak season is. It doesn't tell the full truth, does it?
I would say that there would probably be some anomalies in there, yes.
Okay. Well, I would hope that in the future that the FBI would look at that, and it's just a critique of how these things are computed, because I don't think that it tells the full story when you're looking at jurisdictions that have seasonal destination populations. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman yield.